Hello and welcome everyone to episode 16 of the InkPod Podcast. Today we have two members from Avient here. Shawn, I don't think we've had two on a time yet, have we? This is the first?
No, it's a first. This is exciting.
All right. We saved it for Avient. So we got Beth Kerfes and Ray Smith from Avient. Thanks for joining us, guys. And if you don't mind just kind of introducing yourselves and your role at Avient and maybe a little bit how you got into the industry.
Ladies first.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for having us, guys. We're really looking forward to this.
Yeah.
My name is Beth Kerfes. I'm with Avient, and I'm the product manager for the Wilflex and ASI brand. And the ASI brand is our specialty inks line, the special effects. I've been with Avient for almost 3 years. Before that, I did work for distribution for Nasdaq, actually, for I believe about 6 years. I was on the sales side and also their product management side. So been in the industry a few years, definitely not as long as Ray. I'll let you take it, Ray.
Yeah, well, we figured out I was in the industry 8 years longer than she's been alive. So
Don't give that date.
I'm not going to do the math. I'm not going to do the math. But I've been in the industry a long time as a production manager and business owner. Then I came to Wilflex in '96 and been here ever since. And been everything from applications lab manager to now I'm a field tech manager, where we actually have a team of field techs that go out and help troubleshoot or convert customers to new inks, and also do some beta testing and alpha testing out in the field. So been at it for a while also.
Very interesting. And I know, like, with the storyline from Avient, right? It used to be called PolyOne. So do you guys maybe want to jump onto what's the history of Avient? Because I know, Ray, you've been like with Wilflex for a long time, but maybe jump more about the history of Avient and where it's come from.
So originally, a lot of these companies, not Union was a more of a graphic ink and other types of inks long before any of the other brands. But Wilflex was right here in this building. But before that, we were in Marietta, Georgia, under Flexible Products, and we created the first plastisol ink for Russell. And once Russell was using it, we actually sold the rights to them and for a short time and bought it back, and it was called Rust Coat.
Okay.
After that, brought it back in, started making it, and eventually became Wilflex later, probably 8 or 9 years later. I can't tell you exactly when. But I joined in '96, and then in around '98 or '99, there's a company called Geon, which was a spinoff of BF Goodrich, bought Flexible Products, and they sold off half of Flexible Products to Dow, which was like the great stuff and all that foaming stuff that was made here. We were eventually PolyOne, they created a new company called PolyOne where they merged more companies. And then eventually PolyOne merged or bought Clariant, which is a huge color company, as big as, or almost as big as PolyOne, or as big. And then they decided to rename it Avient to kind of have the spirit of all the companies together.
Yeah. Super interesting.
So we are largest plastisol manufacturer, but we are just a drop in the bucket to our company.
Nice. And the Avient name change, I think, happened recently. Like, was that during the pandemic? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah. It
before,
was.
something like
Gosh,
that.
I couldn't tell you exactly. Time flies though.
It does.
Yeah.
Because when
around that time,
when Avient and PolyOne, they decided to buy the Rutland Group, and we all became one. It was all happened so fast and furious. It was things were happening overnight, and then Magna happened too overnight. We found out the day it happened. So
that's true.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just touching on pandemic, I don't think we really covered the impact that the pandemic had on a lot of our suppliers, but the plastisol ink space specifically, everyone took a hit. It was very, very difficult to get ink from me, from
Yes.
my customers, from me, and me from distributors. Do you want to just touch a little bit on the pandemic and talk about how that, some of the challenges that you guys dealt with and what you guys learned
Yeah,
to, hopefully there's no other
I'll take
pandemic.
this.
I mean, we can't control that, but
I was kind of sitting here when it all happened, or sitting at home, and a lot of things happened. Obviously, not only some of the supply chains were very interrupted. Some of the companies were making the raws decided that maybe these raws they weren't making a lot of money with didn't need to be around anymore because they're making choices like everybody else. If we're going to put our manufacturing towards something, let's make it towards something we make more money at. So obviously we always source the lowest cost product that would work, and so that kind of hit us. We also got double whammy because there were some flooding disasters at a couple of our other raw material places, so we had to hustle there. And I think what came out of this was some really good camaraderie amongst our R&D. Our R&D restructured under Tristan Van Buren, and he created kind of split us up into R&D, development, but also materials, because materials became our biggest problem. We had to figure out a way to make the ink work exactly the same with different materials and different raws or a different combination of raws. So we split up our team and I thought they did a brilliant job hustling to get things done. And we were getting information from some of our suppliers that, hey, this is not going to be available in 2 months. And so our guys went to work, and they were going to work. Now, you remember, half the guys were at home working on this stuff, and we'd come in, and then of course once we were able to get in, thank goodness we were able to continue working because we were essential.
Yeah.
We were doing medical stuff and other things, so we were deemed essential. We came in and kept working, and so on. And I don't know, Beth, I think we did something brilliant. It was not popular at the time, but when you describe why we had to do it, it makes total sense. You want to describe that?
Yeah, it was really just limiting sales to distribution. And Ray, you said it perfectly earlier. It really helped. Instead of having all the large shops kind of scoop up all the inventory, it kept inventory available to everyone, regardless of size of shop. We tried to stretch product across all markets, size-wise. So it was so challenging. I mean, that's the best word to say it. We all had challenges in different ways, but it was.
I think it's especially frustrating to new customers because their history was smaller. But
so they couldn't come and scoop it up. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a really essentially we had large companies call and said they buy everything we had, and we couldn't do it. We had I think it made perfect sense in the long run. It kept people in business, even though it was tough.
Yeah.
But we went out and when I was doing a lot of Facebook Lives because it was something we didn't do before. We just started doing Facebook Lives every week. And most of it was centered around making that ink stretch. How do you make that ink stretch? How can you recycle? How can you, make something cheaper? How can you create artwork that you use less ink? And that's what our focus was, to try to help the poor guy that's sitting there when he's staring at his shelf of ink and he's very limited,
That's awesome that you guys were able to do that. It says a lot about the values and the goals of the company. And maybe, I know like you guys have the 8 pillars for sustainability right now on the business, and it goes a lot with the new inks that you guys are coming out with. Do you maybe want to talk about those pillars and what's done like with the whole team? Because I know it's very valuable to have those missions and those goals there centered, that the whole team can be structured around it. And like you were saying about Tristan with the R&D, where his goal was to make sure that everybody can have products, right? So maybe talk about those pillars, how they lead the company to where you guys now have more products.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So Avient has 8 pillars around sustainability, and that's Avient as a whole. There's 3 of them that pertain to ink, but of the 8, we have lightweighting, VOC reduction, recycle solutions, sustainable infrastructure, and health, human, and safety. The 3 that pertain to inks are the reduced energy use, the biopolymers, and the eco-conscious, which is the non-PVC product. So the eco-conscious pillar has basically our Zodiac brand and Magna, and those are non-PVC. The water-based, the silicone, and the
non-PVC non-PVC plastisol. Yes.
Yes. It starts with A, the word I'm wanting to say. But anyways, so that's Zodiac. And then we have the reduced energy use, which is all of our low cure, flexible cure products. For Wilflex, that's going to be the Rios, the Rival Sports, all of our low cure whites, our low cure bases. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about low cure products if you guys are cool with that. But basically, we were talking about it earlier, but the difference between low cure and flexible cure is that when you have that flexibility in your cure range, you have that much more forgiveness. So Ray, you were talking about it earlier, you just nailed it. When let's say you're printing, you got your flexible cure white in your colors, and then you bring in a specialty ink like Puff. Puff is huge. People love printing with Puff. So when you bring Puff in, well, that's a standard cure product. So then you'd have to switch your whole ink system to match that cure range, but not with these flexible cure products. They're going to cure at 320, just like that new Puff is. But they're also going to cure at 270 when you want to save and reduce energy use. That's the whole point of the sustainability pillar of reduce energy use. If you have new operators come in, you have a turnover rate, somebody comes in, the dryer's not set perfectly right, that's all right. It's still going to cure it. It has that flexibility in it. It has that forgiveness. So low cure, flexible cure products I feel like are so important, and they're just taking off, and I'm not surprised.
And so if you look at our pillars, no new products are being developed without falling under one of those pillars. Mm-hmm. So you can bank on any new color system or white or even a new special effect. We're going to go for the flexible cure, and then eventually someone, and people are already doing it, do a total switch to low cure settings on their dryer with the flexible cure inks, and they're taking advantage of the energy savings and the much better bleed resistance that you get from a low cure, because you're curing that ink before the dyes have a chance to attack it.
Yeah, we have customers that love low cure. That's the big thing that we pushed when we really started pushing the Wilflex line. It was you brought on the Wilflex Rio line. And we were able to go into shops that had never run low cure. And let's say it was a sports shop who was struggling with dye migration. That was an easy thing to say, hey, listen, dye migration happens above 270, so why don't we just try and get that dialed in? So that was a big thing, and better opacity on your whites, and sometimes the hand feel even felt better too. And I think another big one, a lot of these shops, they're tiny, right? And if you could drop your oven 60 degrees, that's a much more comfortable working environment for your staff, which means they're going to want to work harder and produce more. And then obviously there's the savings. Like I forget what the exact number was, but you guys did a study, and it was like, I think it was $250 US on average per flash that you would save annually. And then I don't know if I remember if it was maybe $10,000 on average, dropping down per 30 degrees or something.
It's interesting you say that. We're actually working on a more recent study, because I know that years ago there were some studies even probably done by M&R, and that was really going from electric to gas. But we're doing a study to really show the difference between curing at standard cure and that low cure. And I can't wait to get those results. Yes,
and it definitely a savings, and you definitely can feel it, because the companies that we have switched, you can tell the difference. Yeah. I mean, they just walking in the morning when they've had those ovens warming up, you walk in, it's so much cooler.
Yeah. I think the only downside really, that customers ever come to is they say, hey, it's more expensive, right? And that brings me back to another analysis once that I think came from you guys. And again, I don't know how accurate this is, but a 5-gallon ink generally can do up to 18,000 impressions. Is that kind of the industry number?
Well, yeah, it could be. I mean, so depending on like a white might be less because you're putting more ink down.
Size
it's all by weight. If you figure out, you can actually figure out how many shirts you can get out of a bucket just by weighing a piece of material, printing your design, weighing it again before you cure it, and you see how much ink you're using on that. It's remarkably low. You're talking about like 4 grams. And you're talking
when you take
about,
that into account,
that's a lot of shirts. But yes, you're correct.
If you're
I mean, the
industry
difference,
number,
the pennies, not even pennies difference, half a penny's difference, fractions of a penny difference between one ink and another is unbelievable. You pay way more in labor and T-shirts.
And waste.
Arguing about the price of an ink is just not. I mean, it's not worth it. So.
No, like if you got one ink that's 400, the standard cure, then you got this one. Let's say it's 550. You divide, $150 difference over the 18,000 impressions. Again, it's fractions of a penny. Like, find the ink that's going to give you the best quality product, that's going to keep you guys pumping, that's going to have the least amount of downtime and rejects from dye migration. So we've always been a big advocate of that.
The downtime itself. If you stop for 2 minutes, that's a lot of shirts you're not printing. Yep. And if it's caused by the ink, then you've already lost your savings right then.
Yeah.
Just getting up on press as well. I remember back in the days when we printed with plastisol, and we had those like dye migration whites that are super. They all have their special name, but it's such a thick ink that we had to mix it with a massive drill for like 10-15 minutes because we have cold mornings here in Canada. And then you take that out of the bucket, and it's all about property of the ink, right? So even if you mix it for 15 minutes and then you take it, you put it in your screens, it has times to cool down because it's just the molecules mixing together, right? So you put it on press and it's still super thick, so you have to run a few squeegees past, heat up the pallets, and then you get some low cure ink that flow better. They're just easier to work with. So it's not just like the price of it, but how quickly can you get up on press and run? For us in Canada, with cold winters, it takes a long time with those poly whites.
We're designing our inks to be very thixotropic, so it gets down to the flow rate pretty quick.
Yeah. The
whole thing is about shear. I mean, people say, "Hey, warm up the ink." What we mean is we're warming it up with shear. We're putting energy in it. Really, one of the best pieces of advice I can give somebody: if you get a turnabout or whatever mixer they use, and you have a 5-gallon bucket on there, and you come in the morning, you turn on your lights, you turn that mixer on, let it slowly just turn. By the time you're ready to run, you've got ink ready to flow. It's already flowing.
Yep.
So since it's already flowing, now you're setting up with that ink that's already flowing. You're not putting too much pressure down. You are running it faster. The faster you run it, the shear keeps up.
Yep.
So if you put it in cold, you're going really slow. You'll never shear it back up. You need to be running good, the flood, time the flood with the index.
Yep.
And then print back. You print, the faster you can print and still clear, the better off you are because that ink will just start laying on the top of that garment. But yeah, making that advantage. So like I say, this little turnabout or whatever you guys sell up there, is the best piece of advice I can give you because the ink will be exactly the same no matter what it is outside. Every summertime, wintertime, the ink is still the same. All year round, and you're ready to put it in the screen.
It's true.
Unfortunately, it's just getting customers to want to spend the $5,000, right? A lot of shops, they look at that as a pretty big investment. We have some cheaper options that have come out, like the Revolve ink mixer. We sold a bunch of those. They don't do the 5 gallons, but I guess you could break it down to 1 gallons. But yeah, it's always that hurdle. I mean, I think if there was a solution out there that was, could do a 5 gallons, $1,000. The problem is, if it's something cheaper, the motor's gonna be cheaper and it's gonna burn out, right? So it's that's the challenge, or else I think everybody would have one. But I mean, I think if every time someone bought an auto, it automatically came with a free ink mixer, I think a lot of the challenges that we see because of ink would be resolved, to be honest.
100%. That's what I was going to say.
Sounds like a good package there.
It is, right? I would buy my auto from those guys. No, it helped us tremendously. Like Zach, we've talked in previous podcasts about the things that everybody should buy when they're starting their screen printing shop. And we talked about the donut probe to make sure your oven is dialed in. We talked about the tension meter for your screen room. We talked about the exposure calculator. I think having a turnabout or like a ink mixing system that just activates your ink helps your team massively, just to be able to hit the same print quality every single time, and not having those struggles of like fibrillation, things like that, because your ink is well mixed and it's flowing, like Ray was saying. It helps tremendously with all those aspects, right? So I think that's another tool that we should actually add to the list, right? The turnabout it helped us tremendously, and I never thought about it, but it's true.
You'll find that if you have that mixed ink ready to go, instead of going 45 pounds of pressure onto that t-shirt, you're using like 35 pounds of pressure. And then your secondary white or your colors on top, you're using like 25 pounds of pressure. You're using so little pressure and it's flowing so fast, you're getting a really nice smooth surface. Now you mentioned the thermal probe, very important when you go to flexible cure. When you're ready to take it down to the low cure, you need to use that thermal probe to really key and get your oven running right, because you don't want to be just guessing and bringing it down 50 degrees when you're not sure what your airflow is. You don't know what's happening in that oven. The only way to know that what's happening in that oven, in that ink, is put those crosshairs in a wet ink sample and run it through and watch it. That's the only way you're going to know. You're not going to just putting a tape down or something like that. It's not going to give it to you. So I know people use temperature strips.
Yep.
Temperature strips are fine. They'll tell you how hot it got at some point in the oven, but it has to be in there for a minute. You can't run it through at 30 seconds. It'll never register what it's really hitting. So the thermal probe will tell you exactly what you're hitting for how long.
Yeah. And even your oven, like we run it every time we do screen printing in the morning, and sometimes the oven on the left is a bit cooler than on the right, so we have to adjust the temperature on the oven. And we have a 6 feet wide oven, so it's pretty wide, so maybe that's why. But we know that the oven, our temperature on the left is just cooler than on the right. Is it because of the air conditioning flow that goes there? Maybe, right? But we have to adjust to that. But it's
a lot of times it's the exhaust. The exhaust is pulling on one side, left.
Yep, makes sense. See, I didn't even think of that. But yeah. Stuff like small stuff that we don't think about.
I wanted to say one more thing. With a thermal probe, you can also get kind of like your differential. And what I like to do is I'll mark my lead every 2 feet. So if you got a 8-foot oven or a 12-foot oven, you put it halfway in, and I have it with the crosshairs up, and I hold it still in there, halfway in, and I watch the fluctuation and see how far it goes, because it's just a heater.
Yep.
It's just like a heater in your house.
So
it may
drops,
kick up,
goes back.
so you got to set on 320. It may kick up to 325 and then down to, perfect scenario would be 325 down to 320, back up and down. That'd be perfect scenario, because it's going up and down a lot. But if it's going up to 330 and then down to 315 for a long time and then coming back up, chances for a shirt going through super hot on one and then right behind it super cold is very high. But if it's popping up and down, it does two things. First of all, it keeps it average ink a little higher, but also when you have a lot of shirts on there, it's kicking on.
Yep.
So you put a lot of shirts on, obviously the whole oven cools down. But if it's got a really close differential, it's kicking up, keeps kicking up. It doesn't stop. It gets hot in there while all those shirts are in there. And when less shirts are in there, it cools back down.
Man, I like this stuff.
On the topic of low cure and sustainability and some of your pillars, we had brought up on one of the previous podcasts your new Revive ink line. Is that something that you guys want to jump into a little bit?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Awesome.
So, thanks for saying that, because also I wanted to talk about our website. So, and Avient again as a whole and sustainability, it's so incredibly important. And Ray mentioned it earlier that this is everything that's coming out or that will come out. It's going to be in one of these pillars. And if you go on our website, you'll see just if you Google Avient sustainability, you will find so many things around Avient sustainability. You'll find our goals. I don't know if they have 2023, the report out yet, but last I checked, 2022 is out and it had our progress with our goals. You can find all of our environmental health and safety. You can find our certificates. We have, not to brag, but yes, Avient has EcoVadis Gold, which I just have a note to list all the things that includes. And it's just the globally recognized platform that rates businesses and their sustainability based on 4 categories, which is environmental impact, labor, human rights standards, ethics, and procurement practices. So we, as Avient, have EcoVadis Gold. And then we also have ZDH3 level, sorry, I say this backwards all the time, ZDHC level 3, which is even down to the signage that we have there in Kennesaw. We have to have the right signs and warnings and all that stuff displayed throughout our facility in order to hit that level. Like, it's so precise. I'm just blown away, and I'm obviously very excited about this because it's just, there's so many things that go into all of these certificates that, you know, that mean a lot to Avient, and I'm pretty proud of it. But yes, with Revive is a bio-based plastisol. It's a plastisol.
Just one of our pillars, the biopolymers.
Biopolymer. Yep. Thank you, Ray. Our biopolymer pillar, and it's basically, we have bio-based materials. So think plant-based, and they perform at the same level or equivalent to conventional polymers. So basically, our Revive, we have 2 products within that line, and it's a cotton white and a cotton mixing base that we use with the Wilflex PC. So those 2 products have over 50% biorenewable content, and that's basically plant-based. So when we were at Impressions in Long Beach, you know, we had it running at a booth there at Long Beach. We also had it at M&R's booth at the Atlantic City show. But just looking at that bucket thinking, holy crap, half of that is plant-based material. And it's performing just like a standard cotton white and a mixing base. So the comparable products would be, if you're a Wilflex fan, would be Sprint White and Amazing Base. And those characteristics are going to be very, very similar to this Revive. So Revive offers shops almost with little to no training, improved or, you know, additional, what the heck am I trying to say? It helps them become more sustainable. That's what it is. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so it's a step in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
So,
With
so someone says, I can't do water-based right now. I can't do silicone right now. I can't do non-PVC plastisol. But I can just replace these 2 products. I'm doing a lot of cotton shirts, for instance. I can replace these 2 products, and I'm already halfway to my goal.
Instantly,
instantly, and I'm able to talk to my customers about that. And we have customers who talk to their end customers, and they are very excited about it. Yeah. So it's something you can actually advertise.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
And this is throughout the industry. We have large brands that are requesting this. We have, even small shops. How can I be different from my local competitors? How can I just be different? How can I be more sustainable? What can I do? Well, this is little to no training. So this prints like a standard plastisol ink. It still contains the same amount of PVC as your standard plastisol, but it also has over 50% of a bio-derived content included in it. So what we have seen is really the only thing to give a heads up on is just to make sure the pallets are heated up. Was it 170, about 170?
And it's a normal cure too. It's 320 Fahrenheit. Right. So right now that's all we got. So
and for cotton, that's fine. Yeah. It's not going to be worried about too much dye migration. Do you think the technology will move towards working for 50/50s and tri-bends and 100% poly?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is all so new. These raw materials are so new into our market. And as we get new raw materials available to us, we're absolutely scooping them up, doing the research, doing the testing, the development to expand this Revive portfolio. So that would be, maybe one day we'll have a low cure, we'll have low bleeds, we'll have poly, we'll have all that stuff, but we're forever going to be enhancing this and expanding this portfolio.
With any new line, we're trying to make a pure, complete line.
Yeah,
that's
right.
our thing.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
it's white, low bleed colors, specialties. You know, that's our goal for everything.
This is maybe a more technical question. Maybe Ray, you can answer it. But are the Revive, like, is the Revive white not 50-50 blend because of the bleed characteristics, or more of the bonding properties to it doesn't bond properly to poly? Because I know, like, people say you can't discharge 50-50 blends. Like Heathers, you can discharge them. It works perfectly fine if your poly is white. So could I use the Revive on it? Or is it going to, like, is it the bleeding or is it the bonding?
Well, it's right now, I mean, what we have right now is just going to bleed. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a cotton white.
Yeah, so you could print it on a 50-50 that's header that could discharge beautifully well, for example.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. So, usually when it can discharge means that the cotton is dyed and the poly is white.
Exactly.
That's what it means. So you're printing on a half dyed cotton shirt.
Exactly.
So so it's gonna do fine. You know? So
that's awesome. So any shirt that you could discharge, guys out there, to make it simple. So the Revive white is going to go on any shirt that can discharge beautifully fine. You can use that Revive line and market it out there, because in my mind I'm thinking about the All Made shirts, right? I don't know if you know the All Made line, but most of their shirts, they make a really nice tri-blend. They're 50-50 blends, and they discharge beautifully because all the polyester or the synthetic fibers are not dyed. So, and it's recycled polyester in their shirts. It's really green material. So a lot of people come to us like, hey, I would like to have that shirt. But again, I could offer an ink that would go and match that shirt, which makes it easier for them to market afterwards as well. So guys out there, if you're looking for a product that it's working great, you can market as well, you don't want to print water-based inks, well, here's this great solution for you, and then you can go on eco shirts that are 50-50 blends and discharge beautifully. That's where the question was going.
Think about that. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Dude, Shawn, you're saying you would discharge the base and then hit it with the white on top?
No. Well,
what he's saying, if it's dischargeable, means that the poly and the synthetics are not dyed.
Exactly.
So it won't migrate.
So it won't migrate.
I see.
Right. Yeah. So think about a shirt, all the natural fibers, cotton, bamboo, you even have hemp now. Those are all dischargeable because they're natural fibers. But anything that's synthetic, it's pretty much a plastic, right? It's been dyed. Yeah. So if it's white, you can dye it to whatever color you want. But if it's not white, it's black, gray, whatever, you can't pull the dye out of it because it's pretty much plastic, right? Think about Lycra, think about spandex, think about poly. So all those shirts, people often say, hey, I can't discharge a 50-50 shirt. Well, that's not true. Is the poly inside dyed or not? So that's was the question. That's where I was going with that. So yeah, thank you.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, well, it's just because the All Made shirts are really popular. So props to All Made. They make really nice shirt. They even have some medium if you're in between a small and medium size. Their marketing's good. They make really nice products. So, and it's a green product. I think there's like 6 or 7 bottles of water in that shirt. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's
very cool.
That's awesome.
It is what it is, right? It goes with the market.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
so with
very
Revive,
cool.
I mean, you guys are always looking to bring really cool stuff to the market, and I think one place that you guys have really positioned yourself in the market is having a very, very robust special effects lines. And to my understanding, you guys have consolidated now. You used to have, the Wilflex special effects and the Rutland, and it kind of made sense, I guess, especially during the pandemic, to try and consolidate those so you're not having to have so many different formulas. We're starting to see it really picking up over here. Are you starting to see a lot of trends moving in the special effects directions? Are there some specifically that you find are doing really well? And maybe if you have some cool tips or tricks on printing on some of the more popular ones, like new puff base. I mean, I literally just sold a gallon before hopping on here. That's a popular one.
Well, so obviously special effects is always we get way more questions about special effects than any other ink. Yeah. It's sales wise, it's not huge, but it can really change the look of a garment. And one thing about puff, and especially the new puff, you got to make sure you're hitting the temperature it needs to do to puff it. You want to give it the advantage it needs. You've got to design right. You've got to get enough ink down to get what you want to get out of it. And then also there's tricks to double check and see if you're actually reaching cure and stuff like that. Those are the kind of tips we give, that it does have to be 320 degrees in order to expand. Using when it's expanding is also grabbing some of the material with it, so it's concaving. So from the inside, you got to watch out if you got too much area on the art. You want to break that area up, because otherwise you can actually create a position where it's like a long line, for instance, and it'll concave and they'll push down the center, and it won't cure there. You'll actually crack it. So it's best to kind of, if you're going to do a long area it's good to design in some kind of pattern. That way it just kind of has small little pockets, all along the way, trying to use it as a design work. We people that push the envelope, our puff ink is in those shirts that you see that has a puff print from elbow to elbow in the back.
Yep.
They're huge. They're sitting up. That's a mixture of some of our specialties. But it puffs a lot, and there's pretty big areas, but they know exactly how far to take it. If you went any bigger, those would concave, and it would not look good. So so there's little tricks there. Puff is by far, more people are calling about puff right now than any other thing. Obviously the low cure stuff would be like our Fashion Soft that makes inks, plastisol inks feel like they're water based. You got the shimmers, easy. Shimmers they print and they're very forgiving. They cure well,
Those metallics, thanks for saying that, right?
Yeah,
the
liquid
metallics,
silver.
The liquids, gold, the shimmers, and the glitters. Those are all low cure, flexible cure. So the liquids, those are the smallest particle. The shimmers are right in the middle, and then the glitters are the big chunky metallic particles that they're all low cure. And actually, within ASI, the clears are all low cure. So that HD Clear 2, that's a big one. That's not only acts in Thermaline, not only acts as a really good adhesive, but it has the HD effect to it. It's got that really nice gloss to it, almost like water or glass.
So we talk to our customers and say, hey, here's how you can make it not so expensive. The crystalline is a great way to dress up a girl's shirt or something. You just print it very lightly. Say instead of a 25 mesh where it's really like covered, you use like a 40 or a 60, and you get very light spattering of that glitter on top of a color. The color's showing through, but you still have that glitter look, kind of a shiny glitter look. So there's ways to dress up a shirt with one more screen or underbasing with puff. It's the greatest way to create a look. You're not going for that big, huge puff. Say you're going like an alligator skin, and you just put you put a 160 mesh with a decent micron, or a 110 mesh, and you're just hitting it one time with a white puff, flashing it very lightly. And then you can print right on top of that, because it's remaining flat while it's on the press. But as soon as you put it through the oven, it's going to rise up underneath that ink.
So that way you're not adding, let's say, new puff base to an existing ink, and then even having that sit on your shelf and not using the rest of it. You're using that new puff white down and putting your existing color over it. Again, curing at 320, but yeah.
And it's probably easier to hit Pantone colors with that as well.
Yes. You get a lot closer, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen most of my customers be more successful that route as opposed to mixing it into the color.
Mm-hmm.
I just find that they say they get a lot more puff.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the vibrancy of the color is just better. Like that's what we do with water-based. But I would like to Zach, you have all these, so I'm going to be buying some plastisol ink now and just trying it because I like it. But I want to know, like the base, when you're saying the new puff white, is it a special new puff white, or is it new puff base clear that you add white to it? How do you mix your ratios?
We got a new puff white.
Okay, so there's a new puff white and there's a new puff clear.
And then we have a new puff base that you can create color with. Also, you can use it as an additive into finished inks.
And we have a black.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to doing a Facebook Live for Cinco de Mayo, where we're doing underbase puff with colors on top.
That's right.
And that'll be out on next Friday.
And do you have to
Not
play
this
with
Friday,
your you have to play with your registration, your chokes to be a bit bigger, because is it going to puff a bit on press or not?
No. If it does, then you're flashing too hot. You do not want that to happen. You want it to stay flat. And it's very easy. I mean, you just get it dry to the touch, so that puff will react pretty quick. It's kind of like when you're printing, a carbon low bleed, like our barriers and our it flashes so fast that you only make 2 seconds maybe at 230 degrees. You're only reaching about 180 degrees on the surface, and it's dry to the touch. As long as it's dry to the touch, you're golden.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Okay, guys, I was asking these questions because I've had so many problems on press that I know like some of these guys are going to try it and be like, So no, this is good insights.
And then when you over cure it, it basically opens up and falls flat, right, Ray?
Yeah. So I'm gonna show a trick. I'll tell you guys the trick now. A lot of people call and they say, "Hey, my puff's not working." So I'm saying, "Okay, we got to find out whether it's not working yet or it already worked." Because it falls, if you have it too long in the oven, it falls like a cake. All right. So if you're going through and it's too hot, it rises all the way up, and then it's too hot, it goes, it'll fall right back down. And you can usually tell it's a little more brittle, and the surface looks like the surface of the moon, like little pinholes throughout the whole thing. But if you can't really tell, I always tell people, print it. You can cure it if you want. Go ahead and cure it. If it doesn't look good, you put it back underneath the flash unit and kind of watch it. And if that flash unit makes it puff eventually, that means you're not in the oven long enough, or it's not hot enough. Okay. If you feel like that didn't happen, then my next move would be print it, take it off the pallet, kind of loosen it, go back, put it under the flash unit, and see if it puffs at all. Because then you want to make sure you mixed it right, But chances are you could be, the second one will prove that you're too hot in the oven or too long in the oven.
If you mix too much of the base into the color, I'm assuming that could also cause cracking, right?
No, the base is the base. I mean, you can run the base by itself. It'll cure and puff.
No, but if you mix color into the base, I'm saying. So
if you mix color into the base, all it's going to do, the more base you put in it, the lighter it's going to get. Yeah. So it's like you're adding white to it. That's your biggest problem. It's the bigger problem than cure.
I see sometimes people, online, they're showing that they're having issues with their puff cracking. What is that from?
That's.
Do you think that could be artwork, something like that, where they have?
Sometimes it is. Yeah. So like we asked where it is cracking. Mm-hmm. Like if they're getting too much down and some of it's reacting.
Yep.
Then it's not curing all the way down to the shirt. Then you could have a chance to crack all the way through. But a lot of times people say it's cracking, and what it is, it's in the corner of a word or something like that. It's a dead corner. Best to do kind of round off your corners to let that puff fill around it instead of it being a sharp edge, because what happens is it's puffing and it's pulling against each other. Yeah. And so there's a weak spot, there's a little weak bridge, and you open it and there's the crack, and you close it, it's back. It goes back and forth. But I see a lot of those shirts I was talking about earlier with the writing, and they'll have like sharp edges. All the corners have a little crack in it, but they don't crack. They don't keep cracking. They just kind of fill back in,
Would the Flexi Puff help with that?
Well, Flexi Puff is designed to help extend, get something more flexible. You can use it as an additive, but it's not made to be the traditional puff. It's kind of like creating some more opacity in your whites and make them stretchier, make them more flexible.
Thick deposit, simulate like thick deposit.
Yes, and so and a lot of times I use the Flexi Puff in my whites and stuff like that to kind of give them a little more opacity, but also to create a very subtle texture. So I'd print underneath. Maybe it looks like tape or something like that. I'll make a pattern of a tape, or it could be a skin pattern. It could be all sorts of things. It could be stitching. It works really well, but it will not crack. No, you're correct.
So it's just a curing, Zach. Tell them to go back and figure out their curing, if it's cured to the whole thing, because they're probably using a mesh that's really low, putting a lot of ink on the shirt, and they're like, okay, it's going to puff tremendously. Right. And then they go through, and then the top is cured, but then the bottom is not cured properly. So that's when they get problems. Yeah.
It's starting to activate. It's starting to block the heat. especially you'll see this more in electric ovens than gas ovens. Gas ovens tend to work a little better.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Could you talk about the importance of the stencil thickness?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously you want something to where, we want to be around 18 to 20% emulsion over mesh on anything.
Yeah.
But especially the more open meshes, because we want it to clear. We want that ink to fall in and clear. The whole idea behind thixotropic inks is that you get it running nice and smooth. You're flooding it. You're not nearly touching the screen with your flood bar. And what it does is it creates a motion as it floods. It's
putting ink
kind of spinning down.
In the well.
The ink is getting into the well, and it's underneath through the mesh before you even touch it with the squeegee. So instead of having to try to flood badly and then try to print a shirt by printing ink through the mesh, but stopping it short of the shirt and making it sit right on top of the shirt is pretty impossible. But if the ink is underneath there and all you're doing is cutting it off, it's much easier. Now you're using way less pressure. And I show them, I mean, many times I'll go into a shop when they're running and they're saying we don't have much opacity. First thing I do is look at their white, and they're running it at 70 or 80 pounds of pressure. I take it back to 45. And I say it like this: when you're printing that first print, that underbase, you're printing a t-shirt. Once you print that t-shirt, everything else printing on top of that white, you're printing a bumper sticker. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no absorption. It's hard. You want to print so little pressure that you just dropping the ink on it. So many times I'm down to 20 pounds, 25 pounds of pressure. I take it all the way out, and I'm using the gauges and not using the stoppers. I have the stoppers all the way up. I let the air do all the work. So I'm controlling that air all the way back. It's a great tip for wet on wet printing too. So, say your first print is at 35 pounds of pressure. You want that second color to be at 30, and then 25, and then 20, because you're using less pressure each color.
And I've heard it also reduces dye migration, because you're not pushing the ink into the fabric and creating those, dye migration roots, right? You're just getting the ink to just lay right on top. So
yeah, you want to lay those fibers down, and it really helps.
Cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
So it's good for fibrillation. It's good for the result of the print. It's going to be a lot sharper because you're actually going to have fine definition. You're not pushing it through the mesh and not pushing it through the garment. So your edges are going to be a lot sharper. So proper off contact, guys, is going to be massive as well. Having a nice flood to where the ink is going in the well whenever you're printing. Don't push it into the shirt. Just kiss it on top to where the ink is deposited. And then you want to have good tension on your screen to make sure you have a good release. And then that's going to be set up you for success to make really, really nice prints.
Exactly, right? Exactly. What I like to call it the peel, is when you're actually watching that squeegee go on that mesh. Yes. And as that squeegee's passing over the shirt and printing it, you can actually see the mesh. You see the shadow of the mesh lifting up as it goes. You don't want to be hanging on. If it's hanging on, then something's wrong. Either your mesh is loose, you don't have enough off contact, or you don't have enough peel. And so you want to make sure that it's pulling away as it prints. So as that squeegee comes to rest at the end, nothing's touching the screen. Everything should be up. Okay.
Love it. And are you using the same EOM on, for example, New Puff or specialty inks, or are you going to change that? Maybe add a bit more? What's the value on those?
It's still around that, because you think about it, the EOM is going to be actually micromically thicker because it's a more open mesh. I mean, the mesh is thicker.
Yes.
So it's just a measurement of percentages.
Yep.
So it's going to be thicker. But if you're doing something like a sculpture base or something like that, you're trying to get a little bit high density. Obviously, you do a 200 or 400 micron film to create high density. The same thing goes though. You want to flood it hard and then print light, and usually you end up having to do, because it's a high density and it's a large area, you don't want too much pressure. You want very little pressure, only enough pressure for it to flood stroke again. The second time, it doesn't clear the first one, but it clears the second one. That's where you want it, because you want just enough pressure to clear the second stroke. Otherwise, you're just creating a concave look.
That makes so much sense.
Wise words from Ray Smith.
I could dive into this stuff. I like prints, and I like to go into special effects.
They go on forever.
This go on forever.
That's one thing that Avient's always been really, really good at. You know, if we have any technical questions, either give Ray or John a call, and they usually get me sorted pretty quick. So,
well, I'll even further than that. Our regional salesmen are all printers.
Yeah.
They've all been in it. They know how to print. Some of the guys in here, actually, some of our color guys were printers. You know, they know how to. They come down here and help us out every once in a while, run the machine. So everybody's really into what we do, and a lot of people can answer the questions well. And Beth has learned a lot, and she also knows who knows the answers, right? So that's always a good thing.
That's what it's about.
No one's too. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I tell you,
I
when
know
someone
everything,
asks me,
man. So
Nobody goes
as long as you're willing to do the work, you get the answer. That's what
Exactly.
I step it up and send it over to Ren or someone up in R&D sometimes too. So I say, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about. Let me ask. Where none of us are, know too much, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you very much, guys and gal. Sorry. Thank you very much for joining. Had a great time. Actually, I think Beth is our first woman on this podcast.
Ooh.
Yes, she is. That's true.
Wow, I just put that together.
Hey.
She's just saying guys at the end of it. So
Hey, fun tidbit.
yeah.
She raises Highlander cows, right?
No
Oh
way.
yeah.
I live on a farm, a small farm.
Nice.
They're beautiful. They got like hairdos. You know what I'm talking about? Those cows.
Yeah,
with
they have hairdos and
yeah.
horns. They're
Yeah.
beautiful.
She puts little bows on them and takes pictures of them.
Cute. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Just
That's
for Ray.
amazing. Yeah, so
And then she
Well,
names them.
Hopefully, have a lot more women on the podcast. You know, you're starting to see more and more women join our industry. So
Oh yeah.
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 I feel like it used to be
100%.
very, very male dominated, but as I go to these shows, it seems like there's more and more women who are, doing
Yeah.
the sales or on the press.
Join the
or
print
whatever.
mafia.
So, yeah,
Yep.
That's right.
Print girl
Yeah.
mafia. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
It's
need to
a
do
fun
that.
business.
Yeah.
It's so complicated, right?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah,
What a
exactly.
fun community we have, though. There's so many cool people in this industry.
I agree.
And it's just
Yeah.
like literally this little neighborhood of people that we have. And like a lot, like almost
Totally.
everybody knows everybody. You could always have a place to go. There's always somebody to talk to. There's always
Yeah.
conversation. I just
Yeah.
love it. I love this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jesse from Avient, like what's the word he says for not competition, but it's
Co-opetition.
co-opetition. Like we call each other out, we help each other out. Hey, can you help me with this? What are you using with that? What's your software? What's your system?
Yeah.
What's your SOP in your shop? And I feel like the community is growing, and we go to shows and we find each other out and we help each other out. And this is one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, right? Is to help more people understand what we're doing. And we're not just slapping a logo on the shirt to make money at the end of the day. We're slapping a logo on the shirt to make somebody else make a living off of it, right? It's the company that's coming here and the contracting company that's building houses. Well, now he's going to be able to go there and have a nice shirt with a nice logo and identify himself. So it's a lot more than just putting ink onto a shirt, right? It's the team and the family and the values that you work with. And this is why when you were talking about your core values about sustainability, why it hit hard to me, because there's a mission, there's a reason why you guys are doing this. So thank you for taking the time to jump on.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
My pleasure. I love
You
it.
guys are awesome.
Yep.
Anytime you can get me to talk, I'll do it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. You have a good one, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Okay.
Take care.
soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye.